Audio level check. 1, 2.
This is now live, but he's going to mute it. When you get ready to begin, let us know and we'll hit the button over there to unmute it. You won't do anything. You'll just press the button to turn it off.
Well, welcome everyone. I have the incredibly wonderful privilege of introducing our speaker. So for the first time on campus, we've had early voting here on campus. And as many of you know, the Rights Union has had political candidates out front grabbing us as we walk by, talking to us. And I thought I'd let you all know that there have been, since it opened on Monday for early voting, over 2,500 people have voted there, which I think is amazing, just wonderful. I've been told, and I don't know if this is a sign for the entire state or this election, but the early voting in Altschuler County, our county, is up 90% over previous years overall. And obviously on campus is a part of that. So we're here to hear from our speaker about, indeed, the election of 2018. But before I introduce Dr. Altschuler, I wanted to just mention a few others. And I'll start with, indeed, our host for tonight, who is the director of the Graham Center, former provost, professor of history, Dr. David Colburn. Dr. Colburn, thank you. And this weekend, Linda, my wife, and I have the privilege of hosting a number of dear friends. And these are all people that are also friends of our speaker, who's also staying with us. And I thought I'd just mention those as well. So we'll start with Ron and Vicky Kanakaris. Ron and Vicky, could you just raise your hands? So Ron is a graduate of the University of Florida, has a bachelor's degree in business administration. And I'm not going to give you the biographies of each of these, but you should know that Ron and Vicky are part owners of the Atlanta Falcons. So if you're a football fan, they're the people, and they're Gators. And indeed, all of our guests are going to be with us at the Georgia game on Saturday. So our next couple that are also staying with us are David and Pat Atkinson. And David and Pat, could you raise your hands, please? Thank you. So David and Pat are honorary Gators. I don't know if you knew that, but you are. And again, they're dear friends of our speaker and also of Ron and Vicky Kanakaris. And I should just tell you that they are also among the most generous donors to Cornell University, which is obviously where I met our speaker and the Atkinsons. They have created something called the Atkinson Forum in American Studies that Dr. Altschuler actually oversees. That is a wonderful program that occurs on campus at Cornell University. And they've also created and endowed the Atkinson Center for a Sustainable Future, which is a phenomenal center across the entire campus of Cornell. So, thank you, David and Pat. So, I don't want to take any more time away from our speaker, but I just want to tell you all that he is one of my dearest friends, an individual that for 12 and a half years at Cornell was indeed my mentor. We would get together for a muffin and coffee at 7 a.m. On campus virtually every week, and I would share my problems, and he would be my therapist when I was the engineering dean there, and then also our provost. And he was a person that helped me in talks that I gave and writing that I had to do. But one of the amazing characteristics of Dean Altschuler is that I wasn't his only friend. He has amazing friends. I've just introduced you all to some of them. I think he has more really close friends than anyone I know. So he's a very special person in that way. His official titles are that he is Dean of the School of Continuing Education and Summer Sessions at Cornell. He's the Thomas and Dorothy Whitman Professor of American Studies. And he's won Cornell's highest award that they give to their faculty, and that is becoming a Weiss Presidential Fellow. He's published over 1,200 essays and reviews and numerous books. And he's won all of Cornell's prizes for teaching and advising of students. So it's my real personal privilege to introduce our speaker, Dr. Glenn Altschuler.
Thank you very much, Kent. That was an extraordinarily generous introduction, and I will just content myself with saying that you are so fortunate to have Ken Fox as your president. He's an extraordinary human being, extraordinary educator, and just about the best there is at what he does. So let me begin with a quick word about introductions. You know, introductions are often very flattering, but they're not always flattering. And so my colleague, Stuart Blumen, with whom, and co-author, was giving a talk one day at a university to be unnamed in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And he was being introduced by a very cantankerous historian that David knows of, named Oscar Handlin. And this was Oscar Handlin's introduction. Stuart Blumen thinks he knows something about American urban history. We'll see. And I feel that way a little bit today about my own reflections on the midterm elections. We'll see. But I can tell you that throughout my career, I've benefited from the short-term memory loss of the audiences to whom I speak. So in all likelihood, when and if I'm invited back, I'll remind you that all my predictions were accurate, and you may turn to one another and say, you know, I think he did say hanging chads in the year 2000. He was the first to say that. So let me turn to the midterms. I believe that these midterm elections are among the most important midterm elections that we've had in recent history. We've had some important ones, some of them fairly recent. The 2010 midterm elections, where the Tea Party manifested itself, changed the course of the Republican Party and American history. This election has the potential of having a significant impact on both parties and on the agenda of the Trump administration. So what I want to do this evening is to first set the context for this election, then talk a little bit in detail about what to look for on election night, and then maybe look ahead a bit. So what is an appropriate context for understanding this election? First and most important, let me note that Americans are indifferent to politics. They know very little about politics, and they hate politicians. And that governs to a great extent how they vote and how they respond to policies. Barack Obama and Donald Trump have almost nothing in common, but their elections as president demonstrate, in my judgment, that voters do not value experience in politicians. Barack Obama was only 2 years in the United States Senate and an obscure state senator from Illinois before that. Donald Trump a reality TV star. Did that matter to the electorate? In my view, it was a plus for the electorate, and it stems from Americans' skepticism and loathing and contempt for politicians and their lack of interest in an issue-based campaigns. We can return to that later. It's also important to say that partisan polarization affects American politics, and I'm talking about polarization among politicians, professional politicians, and in the electorate, and the ideological homogenization of the parties are in many ways greater than they've been since the Civil War in the United States. The parties are ideologically homogeneous. That has not happened for a long time, where Republicans are conservatives and on the right, Democrats, liberals, and on the left. Why is this? And how does it manifest itself? It is due in no small measure to the gerrymandering of House of Representatives districts. And you all know what gerrymandering is. There'll be an exam for the undergraduates at the end of the talk. But gerrymandering means that most congressional districts, the outcome is very clear. They're not contested. They may have two candidates, but you know who's going to win. And that was not true for most of American history. So this year, which is a year of comparatively more contested districts, only about 70 House seats are actually being contested, where you don't know what the outcome will be. How many House of Representatives members are there? 435. Only 70 are contested. That means that if you're a Republican and you know you'll win, or you're a Democrat and you know you'll win, you have no incentive to reach across the aisles to the other party and compromise. Why? Because if you do that, you will be, new word in the American lexicon, you will be primaried. So if you're not worried about the general election, and you're only worried about a primary election, which direction are you going to move? If you're a Republican, you'll move to the right. If you're a Democrat, you'll move to the left, because you will be primaried from that direction. Why will you be primaried from that direction? Because the turnout in primaries is abysmally low. Sometimes it is 15 or 20% of the eligible electorate. So the zealots turn out, and therefore, for most of these 435 members, the threat is from within their own party at the extremes, and the incentive is not for political cooperation. So what do we get? Ideological homogenization, and we get partisan polarization. There's another reason for partisan polarization and ideological homogenization, and that is what a writer named Bill Bishop calls the big sort. More and more Americans are living in neighborhoods with people who are just like them. And therefore, they're only talking to people who are like them. Presumably, they're voting with people who are like them. The great philosopher John Stuart Mill anticipated this more than 100 years ago. He said, people place the same unbounded reliance only on such of their opinions as are shared by those who surround them. And that is happening more and more in whether they're gated communities or ghettos. It's true in both instances of the big sort. What's another reason for partisan polarization? The emergence of cable television and partisan news channels and social media. 2/3 of Americans get some or all of their news from the social media. 8% of Americans get some or all of their news from newspapers. 8%. And the social media and cable news are highly partisan in their presentations. So if you're a conservative, you watch Fox News. If you are a progressive, you watch MSNBC. And, of course, your social media choices affect you in similar ways. Social media has become an outrage machine. And so has trash talk radio, so is cable news. It inflates threats, and we can call it middle finger news. News outlets that give you the middle finger. Now, of course, political scientists don't use the term middle finger. They call it negative reference group, which means that many people vote because they hate the other candidate, not because they find their candidate all that wonderful. The election of 2016 proved that. It was the first election since modern polling where the American electorate disapproved by a majority of both candidates. We've never had both presidential candidates underwater, and so the middle finger was people saying, I hate Hillary Clinton, I think he's vulgar, but I'm going to vote for him anyway. Or he is a sexual assaulter, and I'm not going to vote for him, even though I think Hillary Clinton is a stiff and a hack. But I'm going to vote for her anyway. Negative reference group voting is not healthy for a democracy, but it certainly accelerates a political polarization. And we've had, in recent years, another phenomenon that is really important to notice, and that is more and more voters get their cues on all issues from their allegiance to a particular party. It doesn't work the other way around. They don't say, I'm in favor of gun control, therefore I'm a Democrat. They often are saying, I'm a Democrat, therefore I'm in favor of the Democratic Party position on gun control. So positions in the United States have hardened on because people accept the package that is being offered to them. They're not that interested in drilling down. I often say when I give talks, I will give a substantial amount of money to anybody who can say 3 accurate sentences about the Affordable Care Act. That doesn't mean that you hesitate to say, I'm against, I think it's terrible. Well, what's in it? You know, it's socialism, it's bad, or it's great. It will take care of more people. The package is often purchased by people when they don't drill down or don't wish to drill down on the issues. That's true of immigration and border safety. The number of immigrants coming into this country has gone down in recent years, not up. But for those who want to freeze democracy as to where it is, demography as to where it is, their position on immigration is set on socialism, on crime, on globalization, on inequality, on health care. Think about it this way. Almost all Republicans say that Judge Kavanaugh didn't do it. Almost all Democrats say that Judge Kavanaugh did do it. Now that doesn't really make sense, does it? That your capacity to discern whether you think he did it or not shouldn't be a function of your party affiliation, but it has been. I'll give this polarization to you in another way. A stunning percentage of Democrats and Republicans say that the other party is a threat to the security of the United States. The other party used to be called the loyal opposition. They're not called the loyal opposition anymore. And I'll give you another statistic. For the first time in American history, since the advent of polling, more Americans say, I would be very unhappy if my son or daughter married someone of the opposing political party than I would be if that person married an African American, a gay person, someone from a different religion. That more Americans see a problem not with intermarriage that's based on ethnicity and race, but intermarriage that brings together a Democrat and a Republican in holy matrimony. The would-be in-laws don't want someone from the other party coming to Thanksgiving dinner. And guess who's coming to dinner now involves a Democrat coming to a Republican home. That's new, and that tells us something about political polarization. It really is astonishing. So let me now turn to turnout and give you a little bit of the context of turnout in midterm elections. So who knows the average turnout of registered voters in presidential elections? What is it? Anybody? It's a It's about 60%, give or take a few percent. That's very good, but you're taking pictures here. You're not supposed to be preempting my lecture. I mean, do you want to come down and finish? What's the average turnout in a midterm? It's between 30 and 40%. In the last midterm, which was 2014, it was at a 60 or 70 year low. It was about 33 or 34% of registered voters. That is the principal reason why midterm elections, even more than presidential elections, are about turning out the base. Because there'll be a smaller turnout, and you've got to get the people really loyal to your party to turn out. I should also say that almost all midterm elections are a referendum on the party of the sitting president. And in fact, there have only been 2 elections in the last midterms, in the last 100 years, in which the party of an incumbent president did not lose seats. The party of the sitting president almost always loses seats. The party of the incoming president, on average, loses 23 seats, which just happens to be the exact number of seats that the Democrats would need to flip in order to carry the House. Now, that's something of a misleading statistic. He would probably tell you if I let him talk, but I'm afraid of being upstaged here any more than he's already upstaged me. Do you want to take over here? No, you're good on this one. So the party gains or loses seats, of course, in midterms, but recent gerrymandering has reduced the overall number. That those averages are from earlier periods of higher seat turnover. But still, 23 or 24 seats flipped out of 435 is not a huge number when that's the norm for the party of the president to lose. What else should you know about turnout? Republicans turn out always in higher percentages than Democrats. Republicans are more affluent than Democrats, and Republicans are older than Democrats, and old people tend to vote more frequently than young people. I don't want to give away their age, but my dear friends, the Atkinsons and the Kanakrises, they're reliable voters. They vote, and they're not that young. I have to, I'm looking at them right now, and I think they're really not that young. Even a kid like me or President Fox, he's not that young either. We vote, right? The Democrats are younger, they're less white, they're less affluent, and there have been some attempts to give them less access to the polls. And so there may be fewer polling places open. There may be fewer days for advance voting. There may be registration requirements in these states. My state, New York, is 48th in the percentage of people who vote and has an extraordinarily restrictive registration law. So it's not just Republicans who are restricting registration laws. Both parties have some incentive, depending on the context, for doing that. So Republicans can rely on their base to turn out more than Democrats. However, there's always a however. The electorate is divided now as follows. Of people who say what their party affiliation is, 26% say they're Republicans, 32% say that they're Democrats, 37% say that they're independents. Now, that doesn't come up to 100% because There are libertarians, there are vegetarian parties. New York City Mayor Bloomberg has 50 or 60 people who are going to vote for him. And so it doesn't come up to 100%. The Republican base has shrunk. And that's one reason why there is the loyalty of Republicans to President Trump, because those who were uncomfortable with the direction that the Republican Party has taken no longer identify themselves as Republicans. That said, you still want to turn out that base because that's the most reliable support that you have. Now, let me say something about independents. 37% is the percentage of people who identify as independents. 1/3, a little bit more than 1/3 of those people who say they're independents always vote for the Republicans. And 1/3 of the people who say they're independents always vote for the Democrats. They just like saying they're independents. It makes you think you're smarter and more reflective and thoughtful, even though the remaining number of independents are among the most uninformed people in the electorate. They're not carefully weighing the issues and, I really like his views on globalization, but I'm uncomfortable with that provision in healthcare where we're losing pre-existing conditions. But on the other hand, there could be a reform to that without. They're not doing that. They are not following the election at all. They mostly don't vote. But if they do vote, it will be about maybe the character and personality of a candidate, maybe an impulse that they have. Maybe somebody tells them something about a candidate and so on. Donald Trump in 2016 carried people who said they were independents. In 2018, the polls that we have indicate that perhaps 58 or 60% of independents say that they are going to vote for the Democrat. And this is something that we see in a poll that's taken called the generic ballot. Other things being equal, would you vote for a Democrat or a Republican? Right now, the Democrats have an 8% advantage in people who say they would vote for a Democrat or a Republican. Savvy pollsters say that if you're above 6 or 6.5% in the generic ballot, if the Democrats are, they have a shot, a good shot, at flipping the House. And the House, remember, is very different from the Senate, as I'll talk about in just a moment. So, the election of 2018 is all about the turnout. And remember, House districts don't have, by any means, the same demography. And so it's quite possible that both parties will be energized at the end of the election, and that will not affect the outcome equally, because it depends on the district and the composition of the district. So many people, including me, believe that the energizing of the base, of the Republican base, will help the Republicans in Senate races, and the energizing of the Democratic base will help the Democrats in House races. Now, let me talk a bit about the constituents. The Democratic Party is depending on the following constituencies. First and most important, more affluent suburban women who have been outraged by President Trump, by family separation of immigrants, by health care removal of pre-existing conditions, but mostly by issues that maybe don't exactly come under the title of the Me Too movement, but are related to it in some way. There are at least 10 House districts which have a Republican incumbent, but were carried by Hillary Clinton in 2016. Many of those are going to flip to the Democrat. Other suburban districts which had more affluent, some college-educated women who did vote for Trump may flip as well if those women change from voting for the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. The other constituencies are, for the Democrats, are African Americans, Latinos, and young people. And I'll talk about all of those groups in a moment because, you know, President Fox, you should know this. He's not paying me for this, election. That's his idea of friendship. You know what I mean? That he gives me a dinner. You know what I mean? And I'm a happy guy. Nonetheless, I've prepared a Florida component for this election because that's the kind of guy I am. I'll never be able to use this material again for the rest of my life. But he's my friend. I love the guy. So that's why I'm doing it. So I'll get to that in talking about Florida in just a moment. The Republicans are relying on older voters, white voters, male voters, especially those without a college education. And that's in essence, the Trump base that's here. Oh, he's getting closer. Was it something I said that you really want to? That's too bad. All right, now, before I get to what to look for, everybody is down on the polls. I want to make a defense of the polls. The polls actually were not that far off in 2016, in part because there were very few state polls for states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, which are very close, right before the election. But much more importantly, here's the dilemma that pollsters have, and it's a huge dilemma in 2018, even huger, which is a word. I just made it up, which is much bigger than you think, and that is, how do you tell that somebody is a likely voter? That's why polls they're not like physics. What's the way pollsters used to tell who a likely voter is? Did that person vote in the last election? That, in fact, is the best predictor of whether a person's going to vote again. But that's not a good way to do it. If you did that and you took the midterms of 2014 as your base, you'd say that the likely number of likely voters are going to be very small. So what's another way? You say, are you going to vote? And somebody, I'm going to vote. Does that mean they're going to vote? Not necessarily. So pollsters now say, how enthusiastic are you about the, I'm so enthusiastic. I'm overcome with enthusiasm about this. In fact, can I go now? Because I really want to vote. Does that mean they're going to vote? No. So how do you tell? It's extremely difficult to tell. So there are proxies that pollsters use. They look at how many individuals are contributing to the Democrats and the Republicans, because if you've given $50 to a candidate, you're very likely to vote in the elections. And that's one reason that there's a sense on some pollsters that the turnout may be higher is the number of contributors. Okay, so in my view, the most important and revealing state to watch in 2018 is Florida. I'm saying that because I'm here. Giving lectures around the country, it's harder to make the case for South Dakota, but I can do it if given the chance. I can give it a shot. Why is Florida important? Because in Florida will tell us a huge amount about whether the Democratic constituencies will turn out. Why do I say that? Parkland. Parkland was followed by a movement to turn anger into electoral activity. What about African Americans? A gubernatorial candidate for the gubernatorial candidate for the Democrats, Andrew Gillum, is an African American. What about Latino voters? Puerto Ricans resettled in unprecedented numbers in Florida. Governor Scott made 8 trips to Puerto Rico. Senator Nelson says that while Governor Scott was grandstanding, he was actually passing legislation for Puerto Ricans. And there is a Latino population in Florida that represents many different Latino constituencies. So we're going to learn a lot about the turnout of those constituencies in Florida. So here's my sense of the current state of things. Young people aged 18 to 29 turn out in lower numbers than any other constituency in America. The turnout among young people is pathetic, usually around 20% of the electorate. If in this election it goes north of 25%, that will be a significant development, both for this election and for the future. I don't think that's going to happen, quite frankly. And I think that the evidence for a sizable increase in young people turning out, they're turning out on this campus, but whether they'll turn out nationally, I'm skeptical. Latinos voted for Donald Trump, to my astonishment. They voted for Donald Trump in the same percentage as they voted for Mitt Romney, despite what he said about Mexican rapists and drug dealers and so on. I'm not sure that that percentage will change in the split between Democrats and Republicans, and there's not that much evidence that Latinos are very energized. How about African Americans? Here in Florida, because of Gillum's candidacy, there is evidence that there may well be a very significant turnout among African Americans. If that's the case, the happiest person in Florida, next to then Governor Gillum, will be Bill Nelson. If Bill Nelson is going to win this election, Andrew Gillum is going to win it for him. Because when African Americans turn out, I mean, while you're in the booth, you might as well vote for everybody else. And so they will continue down the line and in all likelihood vote for Bill Nelson. So right now, the polls indicate that Gillum is fairly substantially ahead in the race. And the polls are a little all over the place with Nelson, but Nelson has strengthened somewhat in the last several weeks. We'll see what happens in the election. So I want to leave some time for questions and answers, but I want to just end by saying to you in the audience, I'm the kind of person who at 9 p.m. is in his pajamas with the little feet in them, you know, and ready for bed. So I like to know what's going on in the election by the time, my head hits the pillow. So I'm going to give you some ideas about watching the election and what you should look for in the election. And they're going to be on the East Coast because with the exception of Indiana, which closes early, the polls will close earlier on the East Coast. So here's what you should do. I know you're taking notes, and I'm just not seeing it, but here's what I would do. David and Pat Atkinson's state of Pennsylvania needs for the Democrats to win their 23 seats. They need to flip 4 House seats. If they flip 3, that's okay, but not great. If they flip 4, they're looking good. So when you're looking at Pennsylvania, you look to see, have they flipped 4 seats to the Democrats? Then look at New York and New Jersey. There are 2 possible pickups for the Democrats in New York. New York 19 and New York 22. They're in upstate New York. Upstate New York is not friendly to Democrats. There are 2 incumbents there. Claudia Tenney got into some trouble for saying that serial killers tended to be Democrats. I'm not sure what database she was looking at when she made that conclusion. And the other incumbent is John Faso. If either one of them or both lose, it will be a good night for the Democrats. If they both win, then that means that the Democrats are going to have to run the table on the suburban districts because those 2 districts are not suburban. They're fairly traditional Republican bastions. Then I would look at New Jersey 7, where a moderate Republican named Leonard Lance, it's a great name, Leonard Lance is running for re-election. That is a suburban district, and that's a suburban district where the tax cuts, as in Pennsylvania and New York, were very injurious to more affluent people because state and local taxes you could no longer deduct, and where health care is something of an important issue. If Leonard Lance wins, that means the Democrats are probably going to have a struggle to make it to the 23 seats. If he loses, then you can draw the opposite conclusion. And then let me call your attention to 2 Florida races. The most important one, or the most the bellwether is Florida 26, where Carlos Curbelo is running for re-election. He has tried to distance himself from President Trump. It's a district that is ethnically quite diverse. He is a fairly popular incumbent. That's really a race to watch. That will be a bellwether race. Also in Florida, Donna Shalala, the former president of Miami University and former Clinton cabinet officer, is running for a seat in Congress. She doesn't speak Spanish, and she's running in a predominantly Latino district, so it's a bit of a challenge for her. If she loses, the Republicans are probably, again, in reasonably good shape. So what I do is watch those races, and then what you have to do is assume that key races will be decided in California way after you're sleeping. But for the Democrats to win control of the House, they need to flip 4 to 5 seats. Nothing much happens in the middle of the country in any respect, as far as I'm concerned. And so I wouldn't pay too much attention to, House races in Kansas, although actually there is a contested House race in Kansas. There's going to be the odd seat here or there in Colorado. Mike Kaufman, Colorado 6, Republican, is running for re-election. It's a suburban district. He's probably going to lose. So there actually are some races to look for there, but you're not in Florida, and I'm saving those races for my next lucrative lecture tour in the middle of the country. Thank you. So, do we have some time for some questions? Probably one. We have time for. Go ahead, Ken.
So I was told that you need to come up to the microphone to ask your question because it's being recorded and streamed. So please come up. And Zach, you get to ask one question of him since he gave you a hard time, okay? Okay.
Hi there. Thanks for giving this talk. I have a question about your analysis on polarization specifically.
Sure.
So it seems that you kind of assume that polarization has occurred symmetrically or in equally in both directions, so the Democrats have kind of gotten equally as liberal.
I do not assume that.
Okay. So yeah, I was just kind of curious then, because I feel like an important aspect of primaries specifically, as we've seen on the left specifically for the Democrats, they've kind of had a firm control over those primary races all over the country. In the vast majority of races, the more moderate candidates have kind of were able to with their resources and with the electorate able to kind of outlast progressive challengers. So I was kind of curious if you think that the money aspect plays more, because you kind of talk about how Democrats and Republicans are more polarized. That means they're more necessarily more liberal or conservative. But I think that party loyalty doesn't necessarily indicate your extremeness, how extreme you are in your ideology. So I was curious how you felt about the role of money in politics and how that's kind of played into the polarization as well.
In my view, Republicans have moved more decidedly to the right than Democrats have moved to the left. And I'm not sure that money has played a role in that. Money has always played a role in politics. I think that's more due to the geographical shifts, the constituency shifts in the Republican Party that has pushed them in that direction. So it's very hard to quantify this, obviously, but if you take a look at Republican policies from candidates at the top of the ticket on down, and the stranglehold of the Tea Party on the Republican Party, I think you would see a different story from the one that relates to the Democratic Party. Now, that's not to say that the Bernie Sanders candidacy did not gain resonance with a surprising number of Democratic voters. And I think it's also true, as you know, that in Queens, New York, the existing congressman, who was number 3 or 4 in the Democratic hierarchy, was defeated by a young, very progressive Latino woman. So this is district specific really quite often.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Professor.
Hey!
I was wondering if I could pick your brain about a specific
My
condition.
brain is picked over, young man.
Hopefully you have room for just one more.
Maybe.
So, the Texas Senate race.
Yep.
So, on one hand, you've got Beto O'Rourke, who has a lot of support individuals. Everybody's rooting for him because he's kind of the underdog situation, right? And Ted Cruz is also like the most hated man in the Senate. On the other, it's Texas. So, what do you think?
Beto O'Rourke will lose. He'll lose by a not inconsequential percentage. He was hurt, actually, by all the money that poured in from outside of the state of Texas, and his charisma in that respect didn't serve him well. Because it reminded Texans that they don't like outside interference in their elections. Ted Cruz has also gotten a surprising percentage of Latino support, even though his Spanish is like mine. But that Beto O'Rourke has not been successful in tapping that constituency, and many people believe, I among them, that demography in Texas will change the political landscape, but not until maybe 2020 or 2024. And so Beto O'Rourke is a little bit early in his candidacy. And I think it's also the case, and this will be fascinating, and I think you'll probably watch it very closely. I don't think that the young constituency that loves him is going to really turn out for him. And that, too, can be a difference maker. He needs to get a huge increase in the turnout to be competitive. And look, upsets happen in elections, but this is not one that I would place a lot of money on. Hi.
Hi, thank you again for coming out and speaking to us. You mentioned how the parties now view each other as a threat to America, and in the past, they viewed each other as loyal oppositions. What do you think caused this shift, if you can pinpoint a certain time and place? And do you think we could go back to this loyal opposition, and if so, when?
Well, I was trying to explain that in my talk by talking about gerrymandering, primaries, the big sort, and social media silos. They have an awful lot to do with it. So if you're a Republican or a Democrat and you cross the aisles in a compromise, you're going to be punished for that in the next election. That's different from elections that where the election was competitive, and the primary was secondary to the election. That's made an immense difference in our politics, which has become toxic in the partisan nature that we see. It's a phenomenon that's predated Donald Trump, although Donald Trump has intensified that phenomenon in specific attacks on the Democrats that feed conspiracy theories, about them and so on. And the Democrats, in turn, then have attacked the Republicans qua Republicans. How you dial that back under the current context, it's going to be extremely difficult to do that. So, let me say here that I'm an historian. There's no future in what I do. And so I'm pretty good at looking back. I'm no better than he is at looking forward, and we've seen that he's limited in his political insight. So don't count on me for any solutions. I'm a professor.
Okay, thank you.
I am too. So I'm going to ask this question. I've thought a lot about the idea of the severe polarization that has occurred. And outside of the more political realm, I think back to 9/11 and its aftermath. And it's probably one of the few times, at least people of my generation, saw a unification of the country having a common goal. And it seems, since we've considered ourselves somewhat recovered from that episode, we don't have any unifying common goal anymore. It's like the Revolutionary War, we're trying to build the country. Industrial Revolution, we're trying to build the industry. What do we have now that can galvanize us to minimize the extremes?
So I'm not sure I accept your premise.
Okay.
I think that there was a different rhetoric around 9/11, but it didn't stick.
No.
And in fact, as I'm sure you know, the country was divided in the wake of 9/11 over the invasion of Afghanistan, then the invasion of Iraq, over some of the provisions of the Patriot Act. There were acts of violence against some Muslims and some seeds sown for anti-Muslim rhetoric and so on, and action. And so it always happens after a national tragedy that there's rhetorical language around unity. That doesn't mean there's unity.
Would you say that there was unity prior to our modern era? Did we ever have common goals as a country? What caused the dissipation of collaboration if it wasn't, some big event?
Well, you're asking a very profound question, and I'm just a short, bald guy who's struggling to respond to it. I think we have paid a price for the emphasis on group identity in this society, and the relationship between group identity and a larger national identity, which is certainly possible, is something that has yet to be achieved. So in prior eras, other identities were subordinated to national identity. So World War II, there was a huge amount of support for it, even though at that very same time there was militant and huge majorities opposing any immigration of Jews to the United States. So some of the divisions have always been there. We now have a sort of hyper emphasis on identity, and so it operates in all realms to make the kind of unity that you're talking about much more challenging and difficult, at least in my view. So the last thing I'm going to do is give any reason for optimism here. That's not what I do. It's not what I do.
So indeed, the last question is going to be by Zach. Now, what Dr. Altschuler doesn't know that Zach, like me, is a columnist for the student newspaper. His columns can be tough. I've read them.
Wow.
This is the last question for the evening. Zach?
Wow.
All right, so it's come to my attention that I'm probably the last thing standing between many of you at dinner, so I'll try to make it brief and also give the professor an opportunity to end the evening on a light note. So I am a columnist.
What was I heavy during the during the lecture? You need to give me a chance to be a little bit lighter.
I'm oftentimes writing in the position of like a government critic, but I recently read a particularly rosy, perhaps innocent, naive article by the New York Times talking about a particular race where the candidate promised not to do any negative advertising. And you mentioned about this, you talked about this briefly, talking about like the low favorability rating of candidates. But my question to you is whether you ever see, I guess particularly in local races, if it's even possible for candidates to get by without any like negative sort of campaign advertisements or anything of the sort.
Show me a candidate who has a positive campaign, and I'll show you a candidate who either is not in a contested race. Show me a candidate who runs on the issues, and I'll show you somebody who knows he's going to lose. Unfortunately, that's the case most of the time. Negative campaigning works. It works because of the negative reference group that I talked about earlier, that getting people angry, and this is the line that one has to balance, getting people angry does one of two things. Either they get so angry that they don't vote at all, or they get so angry that they vote against the other guy. And one of the principal tactics of negative campaigning actually is to keep the vote totals down. What you really want to do is give, in an era of negative reference groups, you want to get the registered voters in the other party not to vote. And so you want them to say everybody's corrupt. And so negative campaigning is designed both to gin up the base, but also to reduce the turnout among one's opponents. And so what I've now done is, that's the heaviest answer I've given all night, so I have the satisfaction of thwarting you and ending on a heavy note. Thank you.
On any date, I prefer an intellectual buffet. Thank you, Professor.
Please join me in thanking Dr. Altschuler. Thank you, Glenn.